And it's JV's here. Yeah.
Good afternoon, or well, good evening. Today is Monday, September 20th, and this is our scheduled board meeting. I'd like to welcome all of you to this fantastic facility and thank you for attending. We're going to begin our discussion today, or our board meeting today, with recognition. You know, sometimes you have a group of people and you say, you know, you really deserve a lot of recognition for making this possible. Well, the group here that we're recognizing tonight, none of this would be possible without what they've done for the district. So we are going to be recognizing the 2021 employees of the year, and these are the K through 12 nurses. Erica Serapis, Laura Rolfe, Nancy Terrison, Nicole Anderson, and Chrissy Givens. Thank you so much for what you've done for this district. Is nothing better than watching the three of you try to hide in front of the entire room. So thank you for your efforts. My friends on the board, if any of you would like to recognize the nurses, please take a few minutes and do so.
I would just like to say that I was part of the committee on the recognition for the employees of the year, and just all the great write-ups of the nomination forms that we received for your group. I mean, we got so many for so many wonderful staff in our district also, but to just hear the praises and the work that you guys all did day in and day out. I mean, I was on the receiving end of getting calls at 10 o'clock at night, and I know you guys all work the weekends and everything, and thank you for keeping our kids safe and, you know, in school as much as we could. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Mike.
At the risk of just being repetitive, just the strong, steady hand, you embodied leadership for everything you did for us last year. So just thank you so much.
Scott and Jeff?
I want to thank the nurses for everything that they did with about 110 cases, positive cases last year. They were not easy to navigate. We had a lot of students and staff who were close contacts last year of those positive cases, and we didn't have the resources that we have this year that the state has provided to us in order to help with that. And so navigating all those cases, and just to let you know, we've already had 5 positive cases this school year alone in 3 weeks. So that work is not finished, that continues. And we want to thank the nursing team for everything that they've done to support all of the students and staff in keeping us here 5 days a week, full-time, in person. There are districts that have had to shut their doors already this year for various reasons, and your, just kind of steady guidance on a lot of things like masking, which keeps us here, pool testing, and just all of the work that you've done. Just absolutely deserve it more than we can tell you thank you. So thank you.
Yeah, I would just mention, I hope the nurses know how I feel about all of their work last year. I mean, you guys were tremendous, and having facilitated the health team that we had last year and the decisions that we had to make, I'm forever grateful to you. Thank you.
Well, if any of the 4 of you would like to get up and share any thoughts, look at that. I can see the sheer exuberance. It's spectacular. Okay. Thank you for everything that you do, and keep up the great work. That leads us to the approval of minutes, and we have 2 different sets to approve. The September 2nd, 2021. If I could have a motion.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And abstentions? For the September 8th, 2021 minutes, a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or conversation? Please.
Was that the work? Oh, yeah, that's right. Was that like the workshop that we did?
The
Like-
September 8th? No, that was the regular meeting.
That was a regular meeting? Okay.
But thank you. And, oh, it was. I'm sorry. It was the business piece of the workshop. Yes, you are correct.
It was the,
Yes.
okay.
Additional comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And any abstentions? Excellent, thank you. So that leads us to public comment. As we move towards that, just to share this piece, again, as a reminder that the purpose of public comment is to allow the public to comment on many of those things that are on their mind as it relates to the business of the board. These conversations or these comments will be restricted to 3 minutes and or up to 3 minutes, and I will signal you when your time has expired. Would anybody like to comment? And if you would state your name and place of residence, please.
Good evening. My name is Emily Gray. I live in Cumberland, and I have a 6th grader and a 2nd grader in the MSAD 51 schools. I'm not good at this, so let me take a breath. I'm here tonight to express my full support of the Equity Committee and the work they are doing. I'm concerned that the word equity has become politicized. Taken from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, the term equity refers to fairness and justice and is distinguished from equality. The term equality refers to lost my place. Whereas equality means providing the same to all, equity means recognizing that we do not all start from the same place and must acknowledge and make adjustments to imbalances. My children are white. They are, as far as we know, cisgendered. I don't know their sexual orientation yet. They do not have any disabilities. It would be very easy for me to sit back and not worry about equity because our culture is set up to be easier for my family. But I cannot ignore that we have people in our community who would destroy a communication tool for those who cannot communicate the way I do. I cannot ignore the racial slurs that have been used in our schools. I cannot ignore that in our community, my non-white friends feel fear for their kids' safety. These actions may not affect my kids directly, but they affect someone's kids, and I'm not okay with that. I want my kids to know these things are wrong and to see the adults around them clearly saying so. I cannot ignore that we live in one of the whitest states in our country, and that my kids will therefore not get to know the beauty of diversity as easily, and that I will have to actively teach them to appreciate, not fear, people who are not like us, so they can lovingly be out in a world that does not look like Maine. I fully believe the Equity Committee has all our children's best interests at heart. I believe their draft equity policy needs to be finalized and put into place. I believe it is essential work for all schools to keep such policies at the core of their decision-making in order to raise children who are compassionate and given every opportunity to be the best that they can be. There's nothing political about that, and I hope those who are uncomfortable with this work can start to see that. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jason Curry, a social studies teacher here at Greely High School for the last 24 years. And as president of the Educational Association for this district, I would like to remind you, the board, the parents, and all of Cumberland and North Yarmouth, that your community's teachers are doing the best they can every day to give your children the greatest educational experiences they can, intellectually, socially, and emotionally. Times are tough, and uncertainties and shortages abound, and we are feeling the strain. I speak not so much of the high school, although the recent vandalism of our bathrooms due to a popular TikTok craze has both nerves and bladders strained. I speak more of my colleagues at the middle school and especially the elementary school teachers. These great teachers are devoting their time, patience, and resources to make up unavoidable gaps in your children's development, to catch them up to current grade level performance, all while sacrificing personal time, personal space, and personal security. They are feeling the strain. It would mean so much to your child's teacher, to your employees, to get phone messages, cards, notes of encouragement and appreciation as we move deeper into this year, which appeared to be of hope and promise, but has turned into one of fear and uncertainty. Speaking of fear and uncertainty, Stephen King is one of my favorite authors. Two of his better books, Needful Things and Salem's Lot, which, by the way, takes place just within miles of this school district, dive deeply into what happens to the citizens of small Maine towns under pressure from great external dangers. In both novels, the greatest threat comes not from the evil flooding in from outside, but from the fractures that appear between the members of the communities themselves. Their unchecked pessimism, their divisive language, born from long-standing resentments and petty differences, tear their towns apart. I ask you now to spread positivity, actively and consciously, to dedicate yourselves to showing appreciation for the frontline educational staff, nurses, teachers, ed techs, bus drivers, secretaries, social workers, guidance counselors, who are giving your children the care and attention they need, regardless of the effects on their own personal well-being. I ask this because I don't want to see the dystopian future in fiction bestsellers become reality in your hometown.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Good evening, Board. Lori Batchelder, North Yarmouth. I may be a hair over 3 minutes, but I ask that you please just let me finish. I first want to state that I support the work that needs to be done for the equity and inclusion. And I want to repeat that. I support the work that needs to be done for equity and inclusion. I repeat this because if a person in the community isn't standing here praising the current work of the Equity Committee and speaks up about wanting more transparency and more diversity on the Equity Committee, they are deemed to be against equity and inclusion. This is not true. As Jason Record said a few weeks ago, and I agree, I believe 99%, if not 100% of the community supports the end goal for the Equity Committee. What many of us do not support is not having a say on how we get to this common goal. I would like to speak to the community that will be watching this meeting tonight to explain what is on the agenda again tonight and why many of us continue to speak out against how business is being conducted and what that means for us as parents. The chair again is requesting changing the ELSC from an ad hoc committee to other committee. In reviewing the bylaws, there are no policies or bylaws for either ad hoc or other committees when it comes to committee charters, membership term limits, membership size, membership selection process, minutes, and record keeping. Only standing committees have adopted policies regarding how they are managed and what is required for them. For other committees, members are appointed solely by the school board chair without even requiring the board's vote. It is concerning that one person, the chair of the board, has sole power to appoint members to these committees. This is nothing against our current chair. This is a concern in general that a single person, now and in the future, has such unilateral power. I know for a fact more than a dozen community members for the last year have repeatedly reached out to the chair and the board and asked to be considered for the appointment to the Equity Committee. All of those people have been repeatedly turned down or ignored. Yet it is my understanding that the chair has recently added 2 new members to the Equity Committee, board member Jennifer Stewart and high school student Avery Olson. There was no vote on this. There are no policies or procedures on how and why people are being appointed. It is for these reasons that our community will continue to be divided and why the board and the public will continue to hear from concerned parents. Parents who feel they don't have a say, parents who feel the make of the Equity Committee lacks representation of diverse populations and interests and lacks transparency. In a democracy, there needs to be differing viewpoints to move goals forward. Without this, it's nothing more than a dictatorship. A one-sided approach will not achieve equity. I ask the board again tonight to vote no on moving the ELSC to other committee until there are defined policies and procedures in place. There needs to be clear guidelines on such things as tasks of the committee, clear guidelines on the selection process and term limits, a definition of what equity means and what the Equity Committee should be doing or not be doing, and most importantly, making sure there is equal representation for all. I don't think the board is aware of how many parents...
Your time has expired, Ms. Batchelder.
May I finish?
Your time has expired, Ms. Batchelder. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zach Bouchard. I live in Cumberland and have 2 young children in the school system. First off, I would like to say thank you to Chair McKinley for her efforts to make the Equity Committee a regular committee. A regular committee offers a very high level of transparency on par with the Curriculum and Facilities Committee. People are accusing the board and its chair of moving toward less transparency, but that is explicitly false. And thank you for also making all of the Equity Committee meetings open to the public as well. The community sees transparency in action, at least for those paying attention. Also, I'm asking that we act like mature and responsible adults and refrain from the rude attempts at intimidation and power trips by videotaping specific board members while reciting the Pledge of Allegiance or reciting a Lord's Prayer of one specific religion. We all know the Pledge of Allegiance. We all have different religious beliefs. The world has approximately 4,200 different religions. I have some strong religious beliefs as well, but to come here and recite them to you is a waste of everyone's time. We should all respect everyone's personal religious beliefs and practices. If someone is being bullied or discriminated against at our schools because they believe in a certain religion, then by all means, let's discuss that issue. But just as as it would be rude and out of place to stand up at a Christian church and start reciting the school cafeteria lunch menu or some doctrine from a Native American church, and then force the church leaders to recite the lunch menu or Native American doctrine with them while being videotaped. It's also rude and out of place to make us listen to the Lord's Prayer of your choosing at a school board meeting. So for now, let's stay focused on the topics at hand. We are all living busy lives. If you have a sound and rational thought or opinion, either for or against specific school-related items, let's hear them. Otherwise, let's discuss religion, politics, cooking recipes, favorite music bands, etc., on your own time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Chinquette. I live in Cumberland with my 3 children and my husband. I stand here tonight to reiterate my and my family's wholehearted support of the work being done by the Equity Leadership Steering Committee. The vandalizing of our communication board is yet another example underscoring the work we all need to do. It is work that may make us feel uncomfortable. It is work that should cause us to pause and consider things we may have assumed to be true, but perhaps aren't. These ugly events do transpire, not just in other communities, but right here in our own. It is ignorant to assume we do not need to shed light on them and educate our children about them. The individuals who have done this might have been taught the golden rule. They might have had a conversation in their homes about love, not hate. And yet, they may still lack specific details of how to carry these values forward. This is exactly where I believe the Equity Committee's policy and plan will guide our district and community. It is such policies and education, including restorative justice practices, that we can grow, heal, and foster acceptance. As I said earlier, my family and I fully support Tyler and the Equity Committee, and we certainly hope it will become a regular committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Tucker Chinquette, North Yarmouth. I would like to express my opposition to the Equity Committee in its current format. Over the past 2 years, I've heard dozens, if not hundreds of communities members speak up, only to be ignored after their 3-minute public speaking. I've had multiple very pleasant conversations with Superintendent Porter, both through email or in person, but without any actual influence on policies. I was explained that the public would be involved in discussion on equity policies, not just merely to be able to eavesdrop on their meetings, but to be influential, and to my knowledge, that's not been allowed. I was also told that the focus this year would be on academics, and the committee would likely not advance this year, but now here we are in the first month and it's being advanced. I emailed the entire school board, and only one board member responded to my concerns. I, like others, have voiced my encouragement to have diverse thinkers appointed to the committee with no consideration whatsoever. Recently, a community member spoke up for Rosh Hashanah, and it immediately evoked a response from the board, which most things don't seem to get responded to. It also precipitated a letter from the district, which is totally appropriate, except for other dozens of people are not being considered. When the Equity and Inclusion Committee is not equal or inclusive, I think we really need to seriously reconsider its charter. Based upon my observations, it seems like the only way to affect this board is by printing hundreds of road signs and scattering them around the community. I sincerely hope that's not the path we go down. I once again urge the board to strongly consider all community members.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to comment? Seeing none, we will move to communications, and my apologies to my colleagues that there's a few things that I will be reading through the course of these, and then other communication items
Kevin,
we can certainly bring up, please.
Because those are really important, serious items. If I
Yes.
could just, give like one quick moment of levity,
Of course.
especially before Emily leaves. We had an amazing bicentennial event this weekend, and Emily Gray was one of the co-chairs of the committee. And so I just wanted to recognize Emily and all the other work of the folks from town council and others on putting forward an incredible event. I had high expectations and it exceeded them. So I just wanted to it was a wonderful moment of bringing folks together in community. I hope everybody was able to make it. Even my friends from North Yarmouth, of course, you were invited. I just wanted to bring that up and just say it was great and I really appreciated it.
Thank you, Mike. Would there be anybody else that would like to weigh in on communication before I read a few things? Okay, well, the first one has been alluded to twice this evening. And many of you saw the letter dated September 16th that was written to the MSAD 51 community. And if you'd indulge me, I'm going to read this. As you may or may not have seen on social media, we recently were able to add communication boards to our playground at MIW and GMS. This was a combined effort involving our speech and language pathologists, functional life skills teacher, and administration. Some of our students with communication disorders rely on pictures to express themselves and are now able to access core vocabulary words while enjoying playground equipment with their peers. This is a very exciting opportunity for all students. Unfortunately, this beautiful addition and voice for some of our students was vandalized this past weekend at Greely Middle School. Not only was the board broken, but the R word that is used to insult people and specifically targets people with intellectual disabilities was written on it. This event has brought many emotions to the staff involved in making the board possible and to the amazing children and families that were excited to use it. Beyond this, it was an affront to the entire school community and its core mission. We know this vandalism does not represent Greely community values, and we want all students and their families to feel safe and supported here at school. We are a community of inclusion, love, and acceptance of all. Our mission is to help students achieve their personal best, whatever that may look like. Incidents like this are an opportunity for parents, students, and staff to come together and learn from one another just how hurtful and unacceptable these events are. We are hopeful the individuals who did this did not know the actual impact it would have. We invite you to take this opportunity to have conversations in your homes about respecting property, accepting all people, and teaching how much our actions and words can hurt others. For information about how you can respond when you hear this word, or how to talk with your children about how to use this word, you can refer to a document that was produced by the Special Olympics. Please join us as we work to ensure every student feels safe and supported while they're here at school. And this went out over the name of a number of folks who are instrumental in education in this district. And it's a sad day when we have to read something like this, but it is something that I hope the community can respond to positively. And I will pause and see if anybody on the board would like to weigh in, including you, Mr. Porter.
Is there any update, Jeff, on the status of that?
Yes, I do have it in my superintendent's report, but I do want to add a big thanks to Jen McCullum, Siobhan Bogle, and Alicia Destilio, who are staff members in our district, who were instrumental, especially Jen, who started the movement to get those boards in the playground. And we are replacing the board that was damaged at the middle school. We're in the process of doing that. And I want to also thank, I've probably had at least 8 to 10 people now reach out and say, can they help in some way with money, finances, et cetera, to help replace the board. So I appreciate the offers, and it is on order, and we are getting it replaced. So I do not have an update as of right now as to if we know who might be responsible for it, but we did get some information late last week that we're looking into right now.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just think that it's really sad and disappointing and infuriating that this happened. I'm not surprised, unfortunately, because these are things that happen in districts such as similar to ours, that have a lot of different privilege that other people may not have. And I think I wanted to note that I heard some people felt a little uncomfortable that the language initially was centered more on the destruction and vandalism to the sign, or to the harm of the sign, not so much to the word that was written on the sign. And I understand from the letter that that has had more weight, but it's certainly something that just demonstrates why we do this work in school, because it happens in school, because just as Carrie spoke earlier, someone may be taught at home, you know, that you love and you don't hate and you follow the golden rule, but that doesn't prevent things like this from happening. We really need to understand how these words cause harm.
Thank you, Ann. Okay. In this letter, it went out to the community, but is this also available if people want to track down that Special Olympics document?
Yes, I believe the link is in that letter. We have it on our website, for the district website. It's under our community announcements for last week, where there's a link to this letter with that. And it also was sent out to Greely Middle School for 8 parents, but then it was sent out to the entire district through the newsletter as well.
Thank you. The next item that is listed under communications is about the 2021-22 board committee assignments. So a few things to know as members of the community. These will be out on the website over the next few days. I believe the target is Wednesday, which would be ideal. And if I could quickly, I'm not going to go through all the folks on the committees, but I am going to say who the chair is in the cases where that is, or if it's just a single contributor from the board. So for finance, Kevin Desmond. Policy Committee, Ann Maximovich. For facilities, Peter Bingham. And again, these are the chairs. Curriculum Committee, Jennifer Stewart is the chair. Athletic Advisory is Eliza Miller, who doesn't sit on the board but is a delight. The Outdoor Learning is Mike Williams. Communications Advisory Committee, Mike Williams again. Community Partners, the liaisons, Vanessa Bryan is going to represent us on that. The Equity Committee, we have co-chairs as Tyler McGinley and Nick Whiston. The GCA Advisory Committee will be Peter Bingham. The Wellness Committee, Ann Maximovich. Negotiations, there are 2 board members who represent us on those on the negotiations, and that is Ann and Jason Record. The Safety Committee is Tom McGinnis. Recreation Department and liaisons will be Jason Record. And then, as you know, we've talked extensively about the COVID advisory group. The board members that represent us on that are Tyler McGinley, and then we were fortunate to have our students, Madison and Avery, representing us on that as well. These documents this document is going to go up on the website by Wednesday. And if any member of the community has questions about those, meeting times will begin to cycle out following those. And Jeff, if you have other words of wisdom, feel free to share.
No, this is the month when we start these committees up, and each committee decides how often it's going to meet and when it's meeting, and according to the members that are on each committee. So the committee should be starting very, very soon.
Fantastic. And anybody on the board like to weigh in on that? Okay, seeing no excitement, I will continue my solo act. We spent time over the past few weeks talking about board goals and, again, executable goals, not aspirational goals, but these are where we've landed as we look towards 2021 and 22. And what I'm going to do is read these, and you will also be able to find these on the website. Feel free to print them off and put them on your refrigerator. The first goal is supporting the Greely Goes Green plan with flexibility and resilience. Probably don't have to tell the nurses too much about the resilience piece. On this, the key outcomes that we're going to drive towards are reviewing the Greely Goes Green plan at each board meeting through recommendations from the superintendent and the COVID advisory group, and then to ensure appropriate resources are in place to meet the district's health, safety, and academic, as well as social, emotional needs through responsive and thoughtful financial planning. So the way that these are structured, the folks on the board are familiar with this, that we do have a goal, and then that outcome is what we're going to drive toward. You'll see within each of these committees, if you attend any of these, the groups will talk about their plan within their committees tactically to be able to drive these outcomes forward. The second goal is to ensure that the district's facilities provide an environment for optimal learning at all levels for current and future needs. The outcomes that we're driving toward there are completing an updated enrollment study, reviewing the district's short and long-term facility plan to develop a sustainable, comprehensive budget that supports the district's needs. Through high-level oversight, stakeholder input, and collaboration with both towns, the board will complete the developmental stage of a primary school and necessary campus enrollments with a firm commitment to providing a long-term solution for the growing enrollment. And then finally, create an outdoor learning plan that meets the needs of learners across each grade level with immediate and long-term planning through a collaborative effort between the facilities, curriculum, and outdoor learning ad hoc committee members. The next goal is to support phase 2 of the district's equity work. The outcomes we're driving for here will be to adopt policy ACA. The next is to review and implement a long-term district equity plan, along with goals and target dates of accomplishments through recommendations from the Equity LSC and community engagement opportunities. And finally, professional development of all board members completed by the end of the 21-22 school year. And the fourth goal that we're targeting is to improve communication with the MSAD 51 community and all stakeholder groups. The outcomes we're driving towards are to increase the reach of district information by collaborating with both towns to leverage community media channels. Review the district's administrative structure to ensure that proper systems and staffing are in place to achieve this goal. To provide additional community engagement opportunities with the board and board committees. And finally, actively use the recognition section of board meetings to celebrate the achievements of the district. So these may seem simple, but they are audacious goals, and this board has committed through a number of conversations to drive toward those outcomes, and there are plenty of places where the community can support the tactical execution of these in everything that we do throughout the year. I will pause. Would anybody like to weigh in on any of these pieces for communication or any other communication item? You can feel.
Kevin?
Yes.
I think it's important to point out, the process that we went through
Please.
To get to this document. Do you want to go through that?
No, I would love to have you do that if you'd like to.
So the chair had asked us to submit a form of 3 of our own goals, which every board member did. I did way more than 3, so I apologize for that. It's important to note that this document I largely agree with. However, it's not voted on, and I'd like to see a process where on a regular basis, maybe even twice a year or each trimester, that we could look at making this a more dynamic document. And while 4 of the 9 board members had listed equity as one of their goals, I think I wanted to highlight a couple of the lines that I thought were important as it relates to this, and this was draft and approve policy ACA and related equity plan with public input sessions and feedback throughout the process. I think that that's an important part. And also, another person had written, develop an equity policy utilizing better public input and a more diverse committee. So I wanted to point that out, and I hope that we can make this a more dynamic and working document and visit it more regularly. That's it.
Thank you, Jason. Well, I do think, just to comment on that piece, we are fortunate that Tyler works very hard on accountability. And so I know that she has the plan and shared with many of us that not visiting these goals at the beginning and end of the year, but continuing to make that part of the fabric of what these meetings are, to see constant process, constant improvement, and constant engagement in the way that, that we operate as a board group. So, thank you everyone for your work on that. So, I'm done. Let's move towards presentations and begin with an enrollment update from Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Kevin. We're going to put this right on the screen, hopefully. All right, so I'm going to just talk about the enrollment. The principals are each going to be coming up in a couple minutes to talk about the beginning of the school year, which is always a highlight, I know, for the board. Just hearing. Yep, thank you. And they'll be coming up and doing that very shortly, but I wanted to first provide some context for our enrollment. I think there's been a lot of questions about the enrollment of the schools in the district, given that we are going through a period of change, and we have been going through a rapid period of change over the last 5 years or so for enrollment, especially at the elementary school level in our district. And then we obviously had a hiatus of enrollment for about 18 months or so due to COVID, and understandably had a lot of families that were concerned, have kept their children out, whether through homeschooling or whatnot. Last year, we also had some changes in enrollment for parents who chose to send their children to a private school for the year. But so these numbers are reflecting that we have had some, as many districts in the area have also gone through some turbulence with enrollment and looking at enrollment. So the 1 year change is on the right-hand column. I think that's the most important column to look at. But going back 2 years to 2019-20, and looking at enrollment 2 years ago is also instructive, considering last year was really the heart of the COVID pandemic during the school year and did have an impact on our enrollment. So last year we ended the year, or started the year and ended the year around 2,094 students. We are starting this year, and we are headed towards certifying this enrollment. So it's getting pretty close to what we will most likely have on October 1st, which is what the state counts as our enrollment, 2,120 students. In 2019-20, we had 2,129 students. Now, this is less this year than we would have been, than we were projected to have. Last year was less than we were projected to have by the projections that were done by planning decisions in the 2019 report. Again, I will say that COVID had something to do with it. I think the up change is that we have 26 more students over last year. So the enrollment is going in the other direction again. So we're basically flattened out from 2 years ago and recovered the enrollment that we had. The biggest story really, and this has been the story for years now in our district, is that there are 52 more students at Mabel I. Wilson School, 721 students right now enrolled at that school versus 669 students last year. The other story is that the enrollment is now moving up into the middle school. Grades 4-5 has 328 students enrolled. That's 16 more students more than last year. And at the middle school, it pretty much stayed steady, 6-8, just down 6 students. And at the high school, 36 students. And that was a projection that we actually already had with PDI, had projected that the middle school 6-8 would remain steady for a few years, and that the high school enrollment would drop before it started to go up again. So I think the story is the same. The numbers are off, probably about 100 students from what was projected in 2019. But again, I think, a lot of it, we could have written that story a year ago as well. So just looking at grade levels in the district, It shows the change by grade level. This is not a cohort comparison. This is a grade level comparison only, but you can again see that the kindergarten class coming in is 186 students. 2 years ago it was 185. It was 150 last year. Again, I think for some pretty obvious reasons. The first grade enrollment is 15 students down. I would say that that has a lot to do with COVID as well. We had parents that that held their children out or have requested a second year of kindergarten. We've had several of those as well. So I think enrollment has fluctuated, and I think that accounts for some of the kindergarten enrollment and why it's up. Some of those children might have been going to first grade. So kind of looking at that and knowing that there's a story behind some of these enrollment ups and downs. And then going all the way through, just showing you where grade levels are at. But again, the elementary enrollment is the one that we're really focused on right now. Homeschool, private, and charter school enrollment. It takes us a long time to come up with some of these numbers. The homeschool enrollment we have because all parents have to register their children prior to the beginning of school if they're going to homeschool their children. However, charter schools, we tend to get the numbers by the end of September. Private schools, we work on for sometimes months because not all private schools are required to report their numbers to us. And so we are literally collecting those numbers from each school and making sure that they give us those numbers as much as we can get them from them. Superintendent agreements in and out, that's what SA is. Just means that the request and approval of students going in and out of the district. I have not been accepting students as much as I had been in the past. And so we are down in superintendent agreements for the last 2 years. I have been saying no to parents just because of class sizes and enrollment, social distancing, making sure that we have enough distancing, even though we're not requiring that in our classrooms right now. We're certainly still focused on that and making sure that as much as possible that we're distancing. And if we had to revert to distancing at some point in the school year, we would be okay to do that. So I have been saying no more. And we have had, some students that went out this year as well for various reasons. So the homeschooling numbers are about steady from last year. We saw an increase last year, as many districts did because of COVID. That number slipped a little bit this year, but we still have 55 students who are homeschooled in our district at this time. We will have those charter school numbers and private school numbers for you, hopefully later this fall. So the factors, I've mentioned these already. We're seeing a bounce back from the 2-year mark of after being through a pandemic and still in it, but definitely seeing that our enrollment is going back in the increased direction, which is lower than we were projected at this time, but certainly understandable considering what's been going on. And then again, the large kindergarten class and first grade certainly influenced the first grade enrollment as well. So I will answer any questions if there are any, but I know the principals are also going to speak about their schools.
Just a couple of questions. So what was the planning decisions projections for 2021-22? What was the number?
It's about 100. I can get you the exact number, Peter. I don't have it in front of me, but it's about 100 students.
So
off.
2,200 versus 2,100.
Right.
And we don't have, do we have any idea as far as the pre-K to, let's say, third grade, how they matched up? Was it kind of the same proportion?
Yeah, 746, I remember that because I just looked at it this morning. 746, I believe, was the projection for K to 3, and then you've got to add in 32 students to that. So it'd be 776 was the projection for pre-K to 3 for this year.
So it's really the pre-K to 3 shortage and growth is not going away. It's
not going away.
There.
No, I think we had a small class last year. Obviously, a larger, I think, more typical class as we go forward this year. Okay. And I did forget to mention this too, that the board had asked for an updated enrollment.
Right.
And Rebecca Wandell, who used to work for PDI, is currently working on that. In fact, she was emailing me this weekend about it. So we should have numbers when she's finished. She's looking at housing starts. She's looking at turnover housing. She's not going to do a full report again, but she's going to take the 2019 numbers, build on it, factor in the COVID numbers, the COVID dip over the last couple of years as well, and then submit a new report. I'm hoping to have that October, November at the latest.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Nice job. One question. Okay, that moves us to a couple of folks having the longest day of the week. We're going to hear from the principals talking about the opening of school reports, and you probably have a way that you want to start. Oh. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sally Laughlin, and I have the pleasure of being the principal of Mabel I. Wilson. I work with Corey Muncie, the assistant principal, and obviously we have a large staff that works together. So I will make a few remarks, but please know that no one person can lead such a fabulous school. We really try to aspire to shared leadership. I thought I'd talk about the opening of school by being pretty specific about what Mabel I. Wilson is doing and has been doing to address the social emotional learning needs of students. So we have a couple site improvement goals. One is around our academics. The second one is really to begin the year and to continue the year focusing on the very best research that has the best outcomes for kids as learners, especially in this pandemic. So we are using something called the responsive classroom model, which is an approach to learning that started in the early 80s as public school educators were asking, what does the research tell us about successful social skills development for students, not only as individuals, but as a group? Because we know the power of learning. We've certainly been seeing in school this year. Students learn with and together with their peers. They are so fascinated with each other. The adults, we just have to acknowledge that. So responsive classroom came from research on how students learn in the early 80s, and obviously it's been refined and updated ever since then. Some of the evidence they have that this model works are improved test scores in reading and math for students that do it, increased social skills in these students, and greater attitudes of positive peer, teacher, and school satisfaction. The skills that they focus on to teach students are skills that we have identified are critical for everyone in their learning. Cooperation, having things go smoothly, assertiveness, being able to be confident in what you have to say, responsibility, being responsible for your learning and putting your energy into it, self-control, stopping and thinking about what you're going to do, and empathy, which I think the board has been talking about tonight, which is thinking about how your words could be heard by other people and what they might be thinking too. So what the model does is it breaks skills down into small pieces. It has the teacher describe them briefly. It has the teacher model it. It has peers model it. And it provides a lot of time for practice, feedback, and throughout the year reteaching. The kinds of things we do in the responsive classroom every day are we have a morning meeting where we set the tone, make sure everyone is connected, set some purpose for the day for learning. We build energy into learning. We pay attention to students' pacing and energized moves, trying to make sure throughout the day we create some enthusiasm and excitement for learning. We view mistakes as positive learning experiences. We keep a positive focus on that. We use positive language with students. We give them opportunities to reflect on their learning and growth, and we view parents as partners. So anyway, that's a little bit about the responsive classroom model. We had trainers come to us from Vermont. Every teacher had the opportunity to spend time and really recommit to this model. And we are working with a book called The First 6 Weeks, which really does lay out the intentionality of these efforts. And I just want to say that I truly believe that this investment in children, in how they learn and in how they learn together, is already powerful in our school. And what I am so excited about is when you do this as a whole school, you get a plus up on the model. When everybody understands the importance of these routines, this positive language, and this approach to learning, you know, frankly, it really is a joy to be there and to be with our students. I would just also briefly say that we have a second goal for the year. We are always committed to health and safety, but our second goal talks about curriculum being aligned, instruction being as effective as possible, and meaningful use of the assessments that we have. So that's Mabel I. Wilson's brief recap. I'm not sure if there are any questions, but those are my remarks.
Yeah, let's open up for a couple of questions. Sally, if you would. Go ahead, Mike.
I don't have a question, Sally, just to say how thankful I am for the recommitment to the responsive classroom effort. It's extraordinary, and I so deeply appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Go ahead, Tom.
So first of all, I'll echo what Mike said. The dedication that we've seen over the past, I'm not going to limit to the past year and a half. Like the whole time that we've had a relationship with Mabel I. Wilson, we've just been blown away. My question is about the teacher training. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. How many teachers are taking advantage of the opportunities that are provided to them, and what does it look like?
I was there, so I could tell you. The trainers only allowed us to have 30 people at a time to work with, and we spent an entire day not only recommitting to the tenets of the program, but practicing everything we practice with our students. We were energized throughout the day. We had our brain breaks. We talked about why we were doing the things we were doing. We realized that we were learning together as a group. We had all 39 regular ed teachers, we had all of our allied arts teachers, and we had other folks that we could bring in, such as specialists, so that and special educators, so that everyone that was there truly understood the power of this model. It's unfortunate because we have a much larger school than that, but that's what we were limited to do. We had 30 people one day and 30 people the other day at the start of the school year.
Good. Any other questions?
I'm just curious, how long have we been practicing this model? Is this the first year that we've done the
Vanessa, responsive classroom's been around since the 80s, and many of our educators have not been around from the 80s, but they have been trained upon coming to MIW.
Okay.
And there are summer institutes, there are graduate courses. We have been sending folks to responsive classroom for years, as well as the kind of workshops they offer. But when our school talked about what would be most important, we thought it was time that everybody kind of get on the same page together. We also bought 80 copies of the first 6 weeks book. So we also have that as a resource to fall back on.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Great update. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol MacArthur, principal of Greely Middle School 4-5. I'd like to just start by saying it's been an absolute joy to be back and have all of our students back in school full-time. We know that it's our job as educators, or that our job as educators was and is to welcome all of our students back this year with open arms, open hearts, and open minds. As students return to the school this year, we remain acutely aware that there is greater variability in emotional functioning and academic skills than in typical school years. I reminded staff on our first professional learning day that we had students returning from hybrid learning, attending school 2 days per week, students who were homeschooled by their parents or in collaborative learning settings, students in private school who likely attended 5 days per week, students who participated in remote school with all of their instruction from behind the screen, and we had students who had little to no engagement in any type of learning. Our professional learnings to start the year really focused on how we will support students where they are at and help them learn and grow as individuals. With regard to the district's first pillar, health and safety, we're working to try to strike a balance between the procedures to keep our unvaccinated students in school full-time, balancing that with implementing effective instructional practices. So staff are being particularly mindful of keeping seating charts, grouping students within the classroom and across classrooms, and this just adds to the complexity of planning and preparation for our staff, and I'm really grateful for their diligence and attentiveness. Our school improvement plan has 2 goal areas, which are consistent with the second and third pillars of the district's Greely Goes Green plan. For Pillar 2, academics, we know that the unfinished learning from previous grades will need to be systematically addressed over time. We've adjusted our master schedule and extended our math and reading blocks to 75 minutes and added a dedicated RTI block on Wednesdays. This supports teachers having time to provide meaningful instruction in both core curriculum at the Tier 1 level and targeted intervention at the Tier 2 level. We're administering universal screeners, common assessments, and progress monitoring tools, and using our early release Wednesday time to analyze student data and collaboratively plan timely and responsive instruction. Our goal, aligned with Pillar 3, is emotional well-being. We know that academic performance is improved when students feel safe, valued, and a sense of belonging in their classrooms and in their school community. We're continuing our implementation of restorative practices to help students develop their own sense of accountability for safe, responsible, and respectful behavior. We're expanding on the work we began 2 years ago with trauma-informed practices, and we're teaching, modeling, and reinforcing the skills of social-emotional learning and exploring how we can embed them into any content-based lesson, regardless of the subject matter. Each of our staff meetings includes an opportunity for staff to share strategies with one another that they have implemented that support both students and staff members' emotional well-being. It's important to note that our students are still building up their stamina for being at school full-time and relearning routines and procedures and how to be students in a classroom and school full of peers. Our families have been patient and supportive as we again navigate a new and different school year. We are grateful for the kind words. And lastly, I'm incredibly proud of the work our staff has done so far this year and how they've all pitched in to help out with the impact of unfilled positions. We know we'll have some challenges to overcome this year, but as a community, I am confident we will succeed in educating our students with open arms, open hearts, and open minds.
Thank you very much. Let me open up to the board as well for questions. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just have a few just quick things. Thank you, Carol, for such a clear and concise report. I think you really covered a lot of things that we were looking for. I appreciate that. And I think the board understands that there are a lot of vacant positions in all the schools. And I guess I would just like to say, if there's things besides hiring of people that can support our schools, that you'll bring that forward so we can make sure that we're giving you everything that you need in all the schools. So thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks very much, Carol.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mari Trebilcock. I'm the 6-8 principal at Greely Middle School, and I just want to give a little shout out to Jason La Riviera over there. He's our new assistant principal at the middle school, if you haven't had a chance to meet him. So at Greely Middle School 6-8, we're up and running with a full house of students, and I really can't describe how wonderful that is to see all of our students in school at one time. We're settling into routines, getting to know what it means to be a middle schooler, and starting the process of learning curriculum, so it's a pretty busy place. This year, we have 2 goals that are aligned with Pillar 2, which is instruction, and Pillar 3, mental health and well-being, that are centering our work. Both are all about helping our students get back to some semblance of normal learning. Our first goal is to make sure that we understand where our students are academically throughout this school year so that we can take them where they need to go. The good news is that our data suggests that our students' overall literacy skills kind of hung in there through the disruptions of the last 18 months. Math skills will require some attention, but the truth is things are not as grim as I would have expected them to be, so that's kind of a win. Teachers are collaborating closely to make sure instructional time is well spent on the content and skills students need to make progress and move forward. They're also collaborating in teams to identify students who require additional instruction through our Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention programs. We're administering the iReady this week, so if you have middle schoolers in your household, that you may have heard that they had some testing today and tomorrow. And that iReady assessment will inform our decision-making about who requires additional support in Tier 2 and Tier 3, and also what they require. Our second goal is a nod of acknowledgement that 2/3 of our students have never had a typical middle school experience. The 1/3 who have had a typical middle school experience are now in 8th grade, and things have not been typical for them since March of 6th grade. So that's just some perspective taking on how much time elapsed for them. Middle schoolers change so much in that time frame. And I would be surprised if those 8th graders really remember what it means to be a middle schooler. So we're focusing on helping them develop routines and relationships. And the way that we're doing that is we've launched a new advisory program that meets twice weekly for 20 minutes. This allows for community circles, which are our vehicle for attending to the social and emotional connections students have with each other and their school community. So far, the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive from both staff and students and a few parents who have reached out about that time together. Community circles also serve as a foundation for restorative justice circles. Students who understand the norms of a community circle adapt pretty easily to the structure of a restorative circle when one needs to happen. We are also further building community by sending all of our 8th graders to Cow Island this week and all of our 7th graders next week to engage in team building through experiential learning. We're really excited to return to this fantastic program, which is really part of the Greely Middle School culture, on day trips this year, especially for our 8th graders who we really thought were going to miss out on the opportunity entirely. And they would have if we weren't able to do it this way with day trips. So that's pretty exciting for us. So we're off to a good start at Greely Middle School 6-8, focusing on what really matters: our community ethos, the well-being of our students as they return to school full-time, and the academic adjustments that are necessary to regain momentum of learning this year. Questions for me?
Very nicely done. Who would like to jump in?
Oh, I can't resist. Of course, I just can't. If I didn't talk, we'd get home a lot sooner than 11 o'clock tonight. But anyways, thank you, Mari, and Jason, for all that you do. I mean, I have a middle schooler, and it's just amazing to see, you know, them get up and really want to go and what we missed. And it's because you're making a community that they want to be part of. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madison.
I have 3 siblings in the middle school, and they all, from what they have explained to me, I think that you guys are doing a great job of making it as close to an actual middle school experience as possible. It hurts me for them that they can't get the actual Cow Island experience, because that was like moment of a lifetime. I don't think I'll ever forget that experience, but it's, from what I'm understanding from them, they seem to be enjoying it a lot, and it's as close as it can be to a real middle school experience, and they're liking that, so thank you.
Yeah, it's sort of the same for me. My younger brother's in middle school, and he seems to be enjoying it, so I guess things are working out. You mentioned a little earlier that you sort of inherited a bunch of different students with different backgrounds from what they learned last year. You know, some of them paid attention, some of them just went right over their heads. And I'm wondering how this difference in student learning has affected the approach to teaching this year.
Yeah, I think the community building is essential, right? Helping middle schoolers understand the norms and expectations in a classroom and then the larger school community. But I also think academically, it's a matter of taking the information that we have from last year on how our students performed overall, the data that we have, and then looking at more recent data that we're collecting right now and making some assessments at the classroom level to evaluate kind of where they are academically and then make adjustments. There's also a lot of communication that happens between the teachers at different grade levels within a content area. So for example, our math teachers in 6th grade will share with the 7th grade math teachers what they were able to address fully and deeply with their students last year in the math classroom and what they weren't able to get to, so that we have some communication there about what we would expect the student's skill level to be, and then we cross-reference that with data and make instructional adjustments from there.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mari. I really appreciate it. First, just love the adaptive. I think my brain just fell out of my brain. The groups.
Advisory?
Advisory groups.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Absolutely love that. I think it's a wonderful addition. I love the connection to restorative justice and building that foundation. I think it's just phenomenal. So really just major kudos. I did just also say I also have a middle schooler at home. Her whole tenor of being, her aura has just changed, going from not going to school full-time to going. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say the one thing that she was reported back, and then also just channeling my compatriot Tyler, love to get outside a little more. So if there's a possibility of building that in further, that'd be amazing. But, you know, I'm nitpicking around the edges right now. So,
Did she tell you that we're eating outside at lunch on Early Release Wednesdays?
She did.
So we launched that this week, and it was really quite successful. So we're going to continue that, and our recesses are extended a little bit longer, a couple days a week as well, to get kids outside and running around. And it's kind of fun to see them hanging upside down from the bars, and I'm worried somebody's going to land on their head, but they seem to manage it, so we'll just roll with it.
That's right. Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there a code by chance on that TV up there showing? Okay.
You can get one.
Try this again. Mid-aisle dirt? Okay. All right, here we go. All right, excuse me for that delay. My name is Don Gray. I'm the interim principal at Greely High School, and I have with me this evening Jim Hand, our interim assistant principal. I'm going to start off just by sharing a few pictures of the opening of school. This first picture is just before school started. We had a senior social. They missed out on their social last spring due to COVID. So parents got together along with Katie Dexter and planned a social for them at Scarborough Beach. We had probably 60 to 70 students attend that. And there were numerous activities. We had a number of faculty, including Jason and Jim, that helped chaperone that. But the favorite activities, I would have to say, was probably tug of war, and for some reason they still like burying each other in the sand. So We got some raised eyebrows as we entered the beach, and there was some pretty heavy digging equipment that tagged along with us. So, just as a side note, we were contacted at the school, by folks that were at Scarborough Beach, and it just warmed their hearts to see our kids out there, and they praised them for their behavior. So, a little bit of normalcy. This next slide is just a slide of freshman orientation. Again, Katie Dexter coordinates this. A couple weeks prior to this, we trained senior leaders, and basically freshmen come on this day. They learn a little bit about routines, logistics of the school, how to find their way around, do some team building, and really it takes away a little bit of that anxiety away from what's high school all about, especially for that first day of school. So that's just part of our transition plan that we do every year. And then when we started school, our first 2 days, we had all the students were able to run through their entire schedules, and that was important. So if they needed to adjust them, we had add drop the following week, so they were able to, meet their teachers, understand what the classes they were going to take were all about, and then make that determination whether they need to adjust their schedule in some way. Along with that, we had extended advisory time where we met with each class, talking about routines, some of the logistics, schedules, those kind of things. Of course, you can well imagine that probably the most important topic for seniors was the senior privileges. So we did discuss that, and we are well on our way with senior privileges to start this year. And then, so last Friday, we just had our first guidance department meeting with seniors. This was to start them off doing some of their post-secondary planning work. So that was attended by the entire senior class, and that was with Mrs. Fowler, Mrs. Mulligan, and our new counselor, Mrs. Mason. And then finally, just a slide. This is Mrs. Bailey. She hosted a movie night out for some of the music students, and then there's a picture of her in our chorus class. They're learning to pronounce Italian as they work on their district honors chorus audition piece. So those are just a few of the activities that occurred those first days of school. I would say we're off to a pretty good start. I wasn't going to mention TikTok, but it was mentioned earlier. If it weren't for that, would probably be almost a perfect start to the year. A couple of things we did do as well. We do have transition time where students can transition between classes outside, so that helps with them taking mass breaks. We did adjust our schedule just as of today to add another 5 minutes in between periods 1 and 2. That had been something that they had done in the past for snack time. We weren't sure if that was going to work out with the pandemic and trying to keep social distancing, but we heard from students and faculty alike that that really was necessary. And so between those two mitigation strategies and along with eating outside at lunch, for most of the time, students do get some mass breaks during the day. We also have 2 goals for this year. Our first goal is to build, refine, and implement systems of instruction and curriculum to ensure academic rigor, consistent expectations, curriculum alignment, and differentiated instruction. That's quite a sentence. And with that, there's about 12 activities, and I won't go over all of those, but I'll highlight a few. But those are in line with the NEASC expectations, the Greely Goes Green Pillar 2 instruction, and our strategic plan alignment, every student, college, and career ready, wellness, and 21st century skills. So one of the first things we're doing is actually Mari's going to help out at the high school training our teachers on Linkit. Linkit is a database that we have district-wide, and it houses all the standardized testing of students as they come up through our system, and it also has PSAT scores and soon-to-be NWA scores. So teachers can look back at that and really see where students are at. And I think this is extremely important, especially coming back from a pandemic. We're not sure where students are at. So this data should help teachers if students are struggling at all, to go back and it paints a picture for them and can help them with that differentiated instruction. We're also refining protocols for assigning students to RTI supports. Courtney Dowdy and Amanda Robinson have already done a lot of heavy lifting on that. As you may know, we have the Learning Center, which really focuses on executive functioning. We have a math lab, an English lab, and a science lab. Now, you can get assigned to those labs, but there's also time for drop-ins as well. Added to that this year, we added a Ranger support time. And Ranger support time is opposite advisory days. So advisory meets on maroon days, and this Ranger support time meets on white days. And what that's for is that's for students who may need a little extra help in a class, may have a couple of questions. And so it's not a long time frame, but it's 20 minutes where they can go get help from a teacher. So all students have that at the same time, and all faculty are available to support that time. And then lastly, another activity that goes along with this, of course, is we're continuing with our multiple pathways work with Dan Westoven, where we have extended learning opportunities, alternative learning opportunities, and silos, which is student-directed independent learning opportunities. So there's a lot of opportunities. And he's already maxed out, I think, on the silos for this first semester. So that's pretty impressive. Kids are really taking advantage of that. The second goal is really is to develop, refine, and implement systems of support to improve student engagement in learning. And this goes to the Greely Goes Green Pillar 1 and the Pillar 3, and also the strategic plan alignment with wellness. And just to highlight a couple of things that we're doing. One, we're updating our safety plan. We're going to take a look at our being an ALICE-informed school. For those of you who don't know, that's a program that really looks at a way of handling a severe situation. And it stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. So we still have a lot of work to do around that, and we'll be coming back to the board at some point, I'm sure, after we talk at the leadership level. But that's something we're looking at again this year. We also we implemented an attendance protocol just to help follow up and check on students that may seem to develop a pattern of absences. So this is at the advisory level and has advisors, reviewing that and contacting home really from a perspective of support and just checking in on the student to make sure everything is okay and what we can do to help. We also are doing some work around social, emotional, and support strategies, and we have our behavior specialists Jesse Moon and Larry Peters offering some professional development to our faculty on that. And lastly, we have some of our social workers, Aaron Blanchette, Eric Brown, and a couple of our social workers working with students on a program. It's called SAS, and that stands for Skills for Academic and Social Success. And basically, that's an research, evidence-based program, a small group that really builds capacity within students that may be struggling to attend school for whatever reason. There's also a component of that features LL Bean Discovery Center, so that'll be pretty cool for those kids who are involved in that. And lastly, just recently, or actually at the end of this month, Tiffany McFeetris and John Mulligan, in partnership with NAMI Maine, are offering sources of strength training, and we're having it's approximately 12 to 18 of our faculty taking part in that, and then that's also going to be offered to students. And that's a partnership, really. It's about bully prevention, violence prevention, suicide, and building a support network to help those students that may be having trouble, but also a prevention program. So that's just a few of the highlights that's going on at the high school, and I will leave it open from there.
Go ahead, Madison.
All righty, I'll take it first because I'm the senior here. and the student that's under your high school. I think that it's been going great this year, as I was saying with the middle school and what I understand from them. The first thing that I wanted to bring up was the change in the advisory and the adding of that extra 10 minutes. You would be surprised how many seniors smiled today under their masks, all excited that they got a 10-minute break between first and second that they didn't expect, because not a lot of people knew about it for some reason. I didn't. But that was really nice. Ranger support time has been really helpful. I've taken advantage of it myself. It's really nice to have that extra time, no matter what, even if you don't have study halls, to go to teachers if you're needing it. That was a nice add-in. I think that the sources of strength is going to be really helpful. I want to participate in that, and I encourage other students, if anyone actually is watching this, to join that. I think it's going to be really interesting and really helpful for the students in the community and possibly even the staff if that is needed. And I had another thing, but if it comes back up, I'll question again.
Great. Yeah. So I'll start with Ranger support. It's nice to have, that common time with everyone. All students are free. All teachers are free if you need to stop in, if you need to finish up a test. As with before, it was like, oh, I'm free, period, 4W. And then the teacher's like, oh, I can't do that, I have a meeting. So, it would be hard to coordinate. But I think that Ranger support time makes it nice and easy. For the emotional or the the support side of doing your work. 10-minute break, great move. I found out about it during today's morning announcements, and I was very happy. I remember that freshman year for me, which would have been 2019 through 2020. We had it then. And I sort of forgot about it last year, but it was a nice surprise. And I think a lot of people were surprised about it too.
I'll just say, Avery, you kind of prodded me a little bit. I watched the board meeting where you mentioned something about that, and there were some others that did afterwards, so.
Oh, yeah, thanks. That makes me happy to know that I had some sort of role to play in bringing back that 10-minute break.
It's a lot of cachet. Go ahead, Madison.
I remembered what I had to say. The support you've been giving seniors, I was going to bring that up first and then forgot about it. The support that you guys have given seniors is so helpful. I was terrified my junior year, especially because I didn't know what the future had for me. I was terrified that I was going to be doing a lot of it alone, and I know a lot of other people felt that way, but there's so much support, and that's so nice. And Mr. Hand, you're great. I was so, I wasn't necessarily worried, but I was worried that, people would miss Mr. Hoffman and feel like it wasn't, there was it wasn't a good enough change or it wasn't the same. But that day that you came in and we had our class meetings and you were so energetic and everything, it was great. Everyone was so excited about that, so my little thoughts to you. You're amazing.
Right. Can I finish my thoughts, or? All right. I like how you emphasize the emotional support that goes with the advisory time. I think with before, it focused a lot on oh, what do you want to do for your career? All this sort of extra stuff, and it feels like now it's more of a you go in and you just sort of have a very personal sort of checkup on one another, and it's nice to have that a group that you've been with for seniors. It's their 4th year, and yeah, it's nice to have that. It's a nice change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Excellent. Well, hey, since we would all like to say this, thank you for putting in an awfully long day and spending some time with us. The piece that is not always seen as you went through each of your different reports, obviously with age groups, they're remarkably different, but the thought that you put into this and ensuring that students are getting exactly what they need And if it was just that easy, it probably would be a simple day for you. But you're managing in unprecedented times your staff, your students, your families, everybody with the most important issue for their own student. And you do it exceedingly well. So thank you for everything that you do to make this district what it is. And please pass that along to your staffs.
Send them home. I was going to say,
Peter says you get to go home.
Yeah, it's been longer than we thought, so I'd like to just ask the administrators if they'd like to leave. I'm sure they'll all object, I know. But it's been a long day for them.
Thank you. And you're all queued up and ready
All
to go.
right, so I am going to talk about, hopefully as exciting as Mr. Gray was able to present there about, get some student responses. I'm going to present the GGG plan. Let's see if that gets some excitement.
Can you drop into presenter on that as well?
I'm
so
sorry,
we can
I always
see?
do that.
Thank you.
There is no TikTok version of this, is there?
Huh?
There's no TikTok version of this.
Not that I know, not that I
yet.
know of. Not that I know of. So I'm not going to go through all of this because some of this is just to have that available, this information to anyone that wants to look at any of these updates. Obviously, we're talking about layered prevention. Really Goes Green is pillar 1, which is health and safety. The other 2 pillars, the principals talked a lot about academics and mental and social emotional well-being. Layered preventative mitigation strategies. The only one I'll talk about really is that pooled testing began for grades 2 through 8 today, and next week pooled testing will begin for pre-K, K1, and high school. And this is the data, and I will be giving you information in just a moment on these data points, but these are, again, fixed data points. And again, this is the Greely Goes Green think tank. Really, this is the superintendent's 20-person advisory group. A great group of people already have given an amazing amount of advice on various topics that have come up so far this school year. So this is where we're at on September 20th, 21. And I also left in September 2nd, just for your reference, as to the data points from 2 weeks ago. So in terms of state guidance changes, there have been no changes in state guidance over the last 2 weeks. The county transmission status remains the same, which is high in Cumberland County. The number of cases, COVID I mentioned earlier, we've had 5 cases of COVID-19. And we have 37 individuals who have been exposed to COVID who go to our school, not saying they're exposed at school, but that attend our schools, either students or staff. And we have we've had 6 individuals in quarantine. And again, this is all on our data dashboard, which is on our website. Our student vaccination data, again, we're collecting hard data on this. So it's higher than it was 2 weeks ago. We're getting more and more people to give us their documentation, students to give us their documentation. So we're at 49% at the middle school and 53% at the high school. Again, I do believe, and I've said this before, I do believe our actual percentage of vaccinated students is closer to the state registry, which they estimate is between 85 to 89% of students who are eligible in these 2 communities. So I do believe that is the more accurate number. We have a staff vaccination data has not changed in the 2 weeks. We're around 77%. And then pooled testing enrollment, that is information that I can provide at this time, and we'll continue providing it. This is a monthly open enrollment, so I won't have necessarily updated information every 2 weeks, but we do have 916 students, this does not include staff, in these counts, or 43% of our total number of students in the district. And you can see the numbers at each grade level. We do have more students participating, obviously, at the elementary level, because we have unvaccinated students. And GMS 6-8 includes 6th graders who are not currently vaccinated for the most part as well. So you can see that we about 43% of our students are participating as of today. Again, we have a rolling enrollment every month. Students can opt in or out during that period. And so we'll be seeing how that goes over the next month or two. And then I'll be providing in the next update actual testing data. If we've had positive cases, how many individuals we've had to quarantine as a result, I'll be able to provide that information in my next update. Today, of course, was the first day, and we just sent the data out to the company. So the recommendation as of September 20th, again, based on the metrics or the data points that we've got in the advisory committee's recommendations, is that we're holding on. We did discuss these things at the advisory group meeting, setting data benchmarks again, whether there's a percentage that we're looking at, for example, for not masking. But the advisory group at this point felt that was a hold. I think if you're looking around the state of Maine right now, that is a pretty wise decision. That, you know, my recommendation is to go along with the advisory group on this. So not removing masking at this point at any of the grades, including no recommendations for changes to the GGG plan at this time. Obviously, we are experiencing, our county's experiencing high transmission, and the state itself is experiencing high transmission. There are a couple of districts up north, I know people have mentioned this to me numerous times, who are not masking and are out right now. Their districts are out. Music concerts, external events, parent-teacher conference, and volunteers in our schools have been kind of continuous, or I shouldn't say continuous, have been topics that have come up and I assume will come up again at our next meeting. The general consensus was to hold external events and volunteers. Again, we're holding. We do have, won't say we're not having any volunteers. They're for very specific purposes that we have volunteers that we're talking to, but again, not general open door at this point. Our goal is to keep kids in school 5 days a week in person, full time, and that's our one goal right now, is to make sure that we're not having to do any more than that. Parent-teacher conferences, that will be on our next agenda. That was an item that will be coming up. This needs more discussion. There was discussion about giving parents options for in-person or virtual, but again, the advisory group would like to discuss that more. We do have administrators from each school that sit on that, as well as other staff and parents on the group, obviously, to weigh in. And then music concerts. I think everybody would love to see choral and band concerts in this room right here, 510 seats. Can we do that in a way that we have smaller audiences than what we used to have, which was to fill the room? We know we can't do that, and can we do it in a different way? The music department is actually coming up with their own plan, which hopefully I'll be able to see, and then I will be talking with the advisory committee about whatever plan they come forward with. And just to also say that if anyone wants to visit any of the work that is being done, it is on the website, the district's website, record of minutes, and all of the agendas in one document. We don't have separate documents, so we have the agenda, and then the minutes that go with that agenda are all in the same documents for people to easily navigate. And then finally, our next advisory group meeting is on the 12th of October, and I will be providing a next update on the 18th of October, including a more formal review of two things. One is the masking, which I said from the beginning, and the second one is pooled testing and giving a more formal update as to how that is going, which would be part of this update. So that is the GGG update for today.
Thank you. Jennifer.
I always like to start it off. I get people talking. So I have three kind of comments or questions. One being an easy one. What are external events that you talk about?
External events would be events that we're bringing into the school, especially into this space right here. So we have outside groups that we've basically said, no, I'm sorry, we can't invite you in at this time.
Okay.
And we've held off, and we've had requests since spring. You know, can people get into, you know, hoping that September would be different. And we have continued to say, I'm sorry, we don't think it's the right thing to do right now.
So it's bringing people inside our buildings.
Yeah.
The next question would be is if you could, or statement, talk about the difference of your report on our staff vaccination rates and the rates that were in the article or they're on the state website as of last week.
The difference, the disparity between those?
Yes.
Those numbers. So the disparity is that we know that there's some staff, we have a hard, basically in our district, we have a hard rule that if a staff member wants to be considered to not quarantine, we have to see their actual vaccine card. So we're requesting it. There are districts that have put out surveys and said, are you vaccinated or not? Just tell us. We've actually said, can you give us your vaccine card, a copy of it? So I do believe that our staff vaccination numbers are higher than what we actually have on file, but that's the information that we go off of for not having to quarantine staff members. And so that's the procedure that we have. There are districts right around us that are using the same exact procedure that we do, which is asking for a copy of the vaccine card. Obviously, the state has now put out information saying that staff members in the schools do need to be vaccinated or have a weekly negative test, COVID test. We don't have a timeline on that. I don't know when that is going to begin. There have been no more details since the announcement.
I guess what I was speaking on is that I believe that the state has saved for one school a lower number than what was in your report. I would think it would be going the other way.
Yeah, so the numbers that we have are the most current numbers that we have available to us.
And so the state doesn't have current numbers, is that what we're saying?
And we provide those numbers to the state. So for whatever reason, that matchup might not be. I'm giving you today's current numbers.
Okay.
So they might have numbers that are a week old.
Okay. And my last thing is, I would suggest that there implement something, that there's an easier way to submit student and staff vaccination cards. I think the setup right now, I emailed the nurse, she said I need a real copy of it, and there's no way that I'm going to put it in my kids' hands and they're actually going to make it to the nurse's office, and we're not really allowed to go in there. So whether there's a separate email set up that you could photocopy it and just submit it, I think we could get our numbers to a more realistic thing. That's something I could sit at home, scan it, send it, get it done. I think the hurdle of getting it mailed or sent in is a little bit too much. And it seems like maybe that whole process seems all over the place. And I think that needs to get tightened up.
Yeah. No, we can, I can certainly mention that to the nurses.
Okay.
As an easier way to do that and get that done. There are some districts that are, just asking for that information in certain ways, but.
I mean, I wrote it. She said she wouldn't accept it. And then one of my kids was in a situation and they actually used what I verbally said. So it seems like we're not consistent either.
And we can check, we can double check if we don't have something on file, and we have a student that is being quarantined or considered for quarantine, but we have nothing. We can actually check the registry for that purpose and make sure, or check to see if the student is, is supposed to be in quarantine or not, or has a COVID.
But we can't take that registry and dump it into our student population?
No, we can't. We can only verify. We can't dump it. So that's why districts are being told.
That seems like a wasted resource of the state.
Yeah,
that's a shame.
we've been told, districts have been told you have to collect that information yourself. You can verify, but you cannot collect it from the registry.
Or having a volunteer reach out to parents or do something. I think we just need to not go on the number that we're using because it's something different. And if we're going to stand behind that number in some fashion, it should be right or we shouldn't be using it.
Yeah, I don't stand behind the number, and I definitely would qualify and say, that I think the state registry number is more accurate, and that's probably what it really is. But for our quarantine purposes, when we have students, we do have to verify, and if we don't have the information from the student or family, then we go in and then we check it at that point.
So I guess we don't really need to submit it because they could look it up.
They could, and
So
we
there's
have
no-
actually non-quarantined students or not quarantined students because we did check the registry to make sure. But we only do that again when there's a situation that comes up. We don't go in and check it otherwise.
Thank you.
Jennifer, yes, my questions. But to just further emphasize the point about making it easier, especially because of the month of October, we might have a swell of kids getting vaccinated with the announcement this morning, how they're sending it to FDA approval, emergency use authorization next week. And so this could be something where a lot of kids age 5 to 11 are going to be getting vaccinated in the month of October and into November. So being able to get that information in easily and seamlessly would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to bring this up with the nurses and see if there's a different way that we can be doing this.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
I just have a few things. Is there a date when the state will be doing their next sort of update or review that we might expect changes at the state level?
They have not given us anything. The commissioner does meet with superintendents pretty regularly. She was meeting with us every Monday morning, but it's not every Monday morning right now, so it just depends, and that's when we get our updates usually.
Okay. Were you able to find anything on the other schools that have had to close and what the acute number was that caused them to have to close? And then, of course, how do we get ahead of that so that we don't end up in the same situation?
I think it was just large numbers of students, from my understanding, where a case or several cases in some cases were, quarantining, a couple hundred kids or a lot of staff members who may have not been vaccinated. So, and I think the younger grades, obviously, it's a little bit more challenging because pooled testing has not begun in most schools in Maine. We just started it today, and pretty much that's where most schools in Maine are starting it with at this point in the month. So,
okay. As we look to the next update, I'd ask maybe that as you look at taking the masks off, that potentially we look at it from two different groups, the high school and everybody else. If there's potential there, given all the factors, why not take a baby step if we can?
and that is a question that's come up at the advisor group so far, is can we look at students who are vaccinated, basically, or we have large numbers of vaccinated students. And I think to Jennifer's point, which numbers are we using? The state registry numbers, I think most people agree, is probably the accurate number.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Look like you're getting ready, Peter.
No, just the fact that if, to tag on to what Jason said, I mean, based on these numbers that we have now, there's no way you could do anything in the high school till we get more accurate numbers out there. And I think Jennifer had a good idea on this. I mean, as far as the parents, if they're out there wanting their kids to be maskless, then they need to point a 45 at the little characters and get their information in, because we're limited. We can't do that. So I think right now the burden is on the students and parents to give us accurate information. And I agree with Jason that we divide it, obviously divide the high school and everybody else, but parents and kids in the high school, it's up to you at this place. And another thing, of the 5, are you free to indicate if how many of those were in the high school?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's on the COVID dashboard, I believe. They might all be at the high school. There might have been one at one other school. I'd have to check the dashboard to give you that
Well, it'd be
answer.
interesting if we're trying to do this thing with the high school and all 5 of them were at the high school. It kind of one more indication that we need to hang in there for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is community transmission, and the medical doctors who are on our group have really talked about that a lot. that you can't look at just the isolated community. It's important, but you have to look at all the data, and one of them right now is the
Right.
community transmission,
Okay.
considering that we have a lot of parents, obviously, that work outside of the community.
Yeah.
So that point has been stressed very much by the 3 physicians that we, actually 4 physicians that we have.
Thank you.
On there. So you can see here, I'm sorry, I did make an error on that one. We have 4, 5, 6, 8 MIW. Our resolved cases go back to high school, was at the beginning, so. And we have had, we've had some new cases. We do weekly report those cases now in the newsletter so that people can see. We do not send those messages out. I've gotten a couple of questions about those letters that go out that we used to send out again, but just to remind people, we don't send those out anymore.
Well, not a fan of the word choice, but I agree with Peter on seeing if we can get folks to continue to voluntarily report it. And you know, our friends in PTO have always been so helpful in a number of things. If they can continue to socialize and drive people to the impact that it would have if folks would be comfortable reporting. You said one other thing in passing that I just wanted to ask about, which was the 2 northern districts, and you said they're out, the ones that were unmasked and they're out. Does that mean they're closed down?
Yeah, they're small districts. My understanding is the whole district, both districts closed for a period of time. I don't know if they're still closed. Okay. But, you know, it's a combination of masking. We've had other schools, not districts, but schools in the area, and I attribute that to not having pooled testing in place yet. You know, just a reminder that vaccination and pooled testing keeps students and staff from being quarantined. Those are the 2 biggest ways that we can do that. Masking obviously is something we've got to do at this point as well, but those 2 variables can keep most students and most staff in school full-time, unless they're positive.
Well, then, I think you're on a roll if you want to go into your superintendent's report.
Yes. I will try to be quick about that. So we've had a great start to the school year. The principals, I think, have given you a lot of some talking points on that. It's been a very good start. I think we've obviously dealing with COVID still. We have had some folks in quarantine, but not nearly what we were seeing last year. And I think that the ability to manage some of this has certainly been very helpful. But overall, it has been wonderful to see all of the kids back. I think it's been an overall very good start to the school year with some bumps and bruises, obviously, as we begin. And some of the things are just typical beginning of school stuff that we usually iron out in the first 3 to 4 weeks anyway. But with a little bit of added stuff this year. We began, as I mentioned, pool testing today. It started 2 through 8. This is a photo of one of our nurses, Nicole Anderson, at the Wilson School. She went into some 2nd grade classrooms, which would have been the youngest students we started pool testing, and did some quick training. Teachers did the other trainings as well.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do the kids test themselves, or do
They do.
They do, okay.
Yep, and they're trained as young as 2nd grade. They'll be trained as young as pre-K next week to swab themselves.
That is the preference in our household, so I was just,
Yes.
I was at.
There's no staff members that will be swabbing unless the nurse, if you have an RN, an MD, or a CNA next to your name, you may swab.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I actually had to say to staff, if you don't have those letters, you cannot swab.
You cannot swab.
You can swab yourself, but you can't
Yeah.
swab any kids.
Thank you.
And I think that was a big relief, because nobody wants to swab unless you have those letters next to your name. Hang on.
My 2nd grader did it today, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And I watched a lot of 2nd graders, and it was literally less than a minute. And they knew exactly what to do, and this was the very first time that they were doing this. So Nicole, and just to kind of take the mystery out of some of this, Nicole, literally after we were in the classroom, I was in there with her. She left, it was just a few minutes, and again, this was the first day, went out, took the tube with all of the swabs in it, which is in one tube, and the kids just put it in there. And you put the top on, she takes she actually just barcodes it, goes into the computer, the results go to the company, and then the company turns those results around within 24 to 48 hours. We get those results. And again, we'd love to get them sooner, but that's just the way that it works. Hopefully, if there are any positive cases, we are able to catch those in a fairly quick period of time. I won't reiterate a lot of this because we've already talked about it, but it will be on my blog going out tomorrow. Communication boards, obviously Kevin read the letter that went out, and that is also just another link if people missed it, will be in my blog. But just again, thanking everybody for reaching out. We've had lots of offers of financial support or come and dig the holes for the sign to go back in, just people reaching out. Very kind words saying thank you for everything that you do for all students to make sure that all students feel welcome in our district. And again, we've also talked about some of the vandalism, especially at the high school because of the TikTok piece that's been going on. I just want to thank the administration at the high school and our new SRO, Amy Owen, for doing some amazing work and being able to at least partially resolve some of this bring some of this to a close. So happy to see that. And I was actually asked today if there were some photos just to be able to compare and just talk about what's going on. These are what students have to put up with in their bathrooms. So ventilation vents being damaged, soap dispensers or paper towel dispensers being disabled or actually removed from the walls, and things like that. We've got a lot of other photos, but I thought those might be two that you might want to see. So I don't know about our students, but I would be pretty frustrated to have to go in and, especially during COVID, want to wash my hands, and I can't even do that because there's no soap that's available. But again, thank you for all the support. We've had a lot of students actually say they're irritated with this whole thing, and I think that's probably what's helped move this along. National Merit Scholars. We are always so fortunate in this district. Being a National Merit semifinalist this early in the year, there are 16,000 high school students who are recognized, but it's out of 1.5 million students across the nation that are part of this program or enter this program, and it's narrowed down from here to finalists. But our district always seems to have a couple of semifinalists at least. And again, this year, Lev Gaffoon and Matthew Gilbert have been named as National Merit semifinalists. So congratulations. Traffic snarls. We've been putting out some messaging about traffic snarls. I can say that the traffic snarl today was okay, but we've had days that are pretty heavy. Just asking parents to help us out. I think parents have been amazing. Last year they helped us when we said, can you please drive and not put your kids on the bus? And this year we have a lot of parents that are still doing that for various reasons. We're just asking parents to try to come closer to dismissal time, especially at the elementary level where we have a backlog of cars.
I just have a quick question on
Sure.
that. Sorry to interrupt again.
No, this is actually a time to interrupt. That's great.
The traffic snarls is if a child is on a bus that has another child that has COVID, I think that's where parents might be a little bit unclear when they'll get back. Is the whole bus going to have to quarantine, or is it just, I think that if that might be a little bit clearer, then there would be less parents driving their children to school, because last year if you were on a bus with a child that was quarantined, the whole bus was essentially contacted. Right. So I don't know what the policy is right now or how it plays out if there's someone on the bus that tests positive.
Mr. Pullen, do you want to answer that?
On the spot, I believe that it's within 6 feet, and so long as the windows are open and the students are masked.
That they
it's
don't
6
have to
feet around.
quarantine.
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
I believe Scott is correct.
Okay.
We both have the same answer.
And I would also say that just about every one of our elementary buses are full right now. So, so the parents who are driving right now are in fact helping us out, so.
They are helping us out.
Okay.
Yeah, we thank parents for driving, and whether your child is on a bus or car, we take them no matter what, and we dismiss them no matter what, but we appreciate it. We're just asking for a little bit of help because of the congestion that occurs, and again, our SRO's been out there waving buses through when they get stuck in the congestion, so we appreciate all of that as well.
Do we have less buses, more kids? I mean, why are they full when there are this many more parents?
Elementary is definitely full.
Elementary buses are definitely more full due to enrollment, and you know, adding another bus would be difficult because you need to add another bus driver, right? So, so that's one of the reasons that we're facing right now. So.
That's something we might want to think about when thinking about a budget for next year and dealing with the enrollment swelling. We may need to add another bus driver.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. There's a shortage of bus drivers, as everybody knows, across the entire state. We're actually going to be running our own training class to get bus drivers their permits, and we're also going, right now, we actually have 2 drivers that are in training with our existing training, so, and that bus driving class to get permits will be free, and we'll start with some of our own staff and community members if they're interested.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kevin, is that a different training versus CDL, or can you explain that a little bit?
I don't have all the intricacies of it, but yes, you have to get your CDL license, and then you have to get your passenger endorsement on top of that, and then you have to have time physically driving the bus. Okay, and so we actually have, you know, the permit test that would take place, and then right now, we actually have our own bus drivers who actually take those people who have their permits on the road and train them so that they can pass their road test.
And where have you published that for people that might be interested?
Well, I think we're probably going to put it in the Forecaster. We're going to try the Town Crier. All right, just some local pieces that would help with that, and see what we can do, probably in Jeff's newsletter and other areas like that. But it's Don Foster, who is our facilities manager, has been you know, doing a course similar to this at other times, and we'll be offering that this time. And then, of course, Phil Blake down in our bus garage, along with, right now we have 2 specific drivers, Basil Morrison and Kevin Foster, who are actually taking people out on the road and training them. So we're, you know, we're in the process of that. And, you know, our bus driver shortage hasn't been as great. We offer our drivers 40 hours a week, full-time, year-round, by having them do facilities duties as well.
Thanks.
I tried to get my bus license, but I cannot back up. I can't back up my car, so forget it.
You've been banned.
Yes, I've been banned. That's not going to work. So anyway, I think the traffic, we are, you know, we're aware of it. I think it's just ebb and flow, and thank you for the new crosswalk. Kevin Foster actually was out there painting it at 5 in the morning one day because we just, after having a meeting with our SRO, we decided it was a safety hazard. We didn't have enough crosswalks on our campus for the number of students who needed to cross there as well. And I just found this out before the meeting, so I added it real quick, so I don't even know if this is grammatically correct. But Nora Dexter, she is actually she's a senior, is helping with the North Yarmouth Historical Society with a project. I don't know what's going on with historical societies, but they always like to seem to move their buildings every once in a while. Cumberland moved its building about a year ago, and now North Yarmouth is. But anyway, they're raising money to build to move that building, and it's pretty expensive. And Nora ended up creating this amazing, just kind of highlighted PowerPoint and program for the Historical Society about the old meeting house or the old townhouse in North Yarmouth. And I have a link to that in my blog if people want to check it out. But the Historical Society was so excited about her work, they emailed and said, please take a look at it and put it out there because it was great. So students make a difference in so many different ways. We like to highlight them from time to time, and whether it's in school or not. And Nora did an amazing job, and I thought I'd share it tonight. So that's the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. So that brings us to committee reports. We don't have to go into a depth on that because we just talked about who's chairing each of those. I will put it out If anybody of the existing chairs has anything that they deem urgent that you want to weigh in, now would be the time. All right, seeing no excitement, that moves us to our items for action. In the absence of the chair, she was collecting some names from folks that had an interest in being the board delegate. I don't have that information, and I would like to ask if anybody had written to Tyler saying that they would like to be considered for that position. I cannot believe there's not excitement over this.
It's remote this year, correct?
It is, and it's on a
But
Saturday.
it's on a Saturday. I mean, like, that is, I think, is really unfortunate in different ways, because I would have loved even just to go, and now I just don't think I can, even to attend.
Well,
Do
if
we
I
know
can-
what date that is?
What's that?
What date it is?
October 20-something.
Yeah, it's around October 28th, 29th.
Yeah.
It's whatever Saturday that
It's right
is.
before Halloween.
It is the 23rd is a Saturday, as is the 30th,
Yeah, so the 23rd.
23rd. I had such a great time the last time that I went that if I could be gauche enough to put my name in that field, if anybody would be interested in making a motion, that I am a delegate to the MSMA full conference.
I would so move.
Yeah, I'll second.
Any discussion?
You're a good man, Kevin
Thank
Desmond.
thank you,
Well,
Kevin.
All those in favor? Opposed? And one abstention. I win. The next item for action is approval of professional positions, and we're talking about a GMS 4.5 literacy specialist, the irony. And I would entertain a motion for that.
moved.
And a second.
Second.
And any discussion, and Jeff or Scott, if you'd like to talk about the candidate or the role, that would be delightful.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this time of the year after school starts, it is very challenging to attract teachers to move from one district to the next. But we are very, very fortunate to find an extremely qualified candidate for this position who is currently working in another school district, but this is kind of her dream job. And that's kind of what she told us at the interview, and I'm really excited to be able to bring somebody of this caliber to the district at this time of the year, which is very challenging to find and recruit new teachers at this time. So I'm very pleased to put this name forward.
That's fantastic. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Any in opposition? And any abstentions? No. That brings us to item C. Allow me to read this. This is going to be a vote to clarify procedures for membership appointment of other board committees in the board's bylaws to line up with the language for standing committees. This is item I, other board committees. The following other committees of the board are hereby authorized, and members of the board shall be appointed by the board chair to these committees on an annual basis as needed. Other representation from the staff or community may be consented to by the board. Additional other committees can be added by vote of the board. And right now we have two other committees, and they are curriculum and facilities. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
And if you would read that language, Peter, I would give it to you right there.
I would recommend to move that we clarify the procedure for membership appointment of other board committees in the board's bylaws to line up with language for standing committees.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And discussion.
Has anything changed since 2 or 3 weeks ago on this? The verbiage?
It's, unless this is the same piece of information.
This is the
so no,
same,
it isn't.
yeah, this is the same language as it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I have trouble with this. I feel like we need to do a greater review of all of the committees and sort of how they're created and the members' terms. I feel like moving this forward is just one little piece of something that needs a greater review. I'm not supportive. Nothing's changed in the last few weeks.
Thank you. Other comments?
Just to note that, I mean, we're governed by bylaws that are pretty standard across the whole of the Maine School Board Association. The bylaws and these languages, it comes from the Maine School Board Association. So what we're doing is actually quite in line with roughly every other school district in the state of Maine. So I appreciate the willingness and the interest in diving in deeper there, but just wanted to clarify that this is the opposite of doing something that's radical or out of the norm. It's actually following the norm.
I think that clarifies it well, but I am with Jason that periodically we should be taking a look at our bylaws at all levels, in the same way that we do effectively for policies, and ensure that they meet the current and ongoing needs of the district. And I think over time, that would make a lot of sense to undertake that.
We
So I'm glad you brought
just
that up.
did.
Please.
We recently have looked at our bylaws.
We did make an update last year, but I do think it's a dynamic, living document that needs to be looked at. Any additional comments? All those in favor? And opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, we've got one abstention, one no. Thank you. That leads us to, well, incorrectly labeled, well, it is item D, I'm sorry, C, which would actually be item D if you're playing along at home. This is going to be a vote to change the Communications and the Equity Leadership Committee from special committee to ad hoc, from special committee / ad hoc committee to other board committees as outlined in Article 5 of the board bylaws under other committees, and to amend the bylaws as such. And before we take a motion on that, I'd like to say that the text up on top should also include negotiations as part of that, because that's the recommended motion.
Yeah.
With that said, if anybody would like to read that text and make a motion.
Can we split it up before we get that far? I'd like to be able to vote positive on some of these. I think it's appropriate to split them up.
So give me a motion then, Jason.
I move to vote to change the Communications Committee from a special ad hoc committee to other board committees as outlined in Article 5 of the board bylaws under other committees, and amend the bylaws as such.
So
How about adding negotiations?
I have further questions about that just because of the sensitivity to it.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it. We're
Okay,
just
we have
talking communication.
Communication, that's
Yep.
correct. Thank you, Jennifer. Let's have a discussion about that, if you want to talk about that further, Jason, or if anybody else would like to. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of that motion to change communication? And any objections? Seeing none? So we've isolated communication. We have a motion for negotiations and equity.
I'll move to vote to change the Negotiations Committee from special committee, ad hoc committee to other board committees as outlined in Article 5 of the board bylaws and other committees, and amend the bylaws as such.
Second. I got you.
So my question on that is, if we're going to do a greater review of various committees, and I think we ought to, that negotiations, if they're in the same group as communications and curriculum and facilities, which potentially if you wanted to make bylaws such that they had to have minutes and post and all that, negotiations, correct me if I'm wrong, is sort of special in that you can't post that sort of thing.
Protected by executive session, correct?
Yeah. And so I sort of have concern about putting them into the same bucket. It is different.
Well, from my perspective, and then I'll let you folks who are smarter than me, if we're talking, we could protect anything under communication or negotiation or any other committee by a qualified executive session to protect that information. I believe that makes that a non-issue. Now I'll look and see if I'm completely
I would
wrong.
also say that anything under other committees, you don't have to post by your bylaws, you don't have to post any minutes or the agenda. That's the standing committee. Now, a lot of groups do, but negotiations obviously would be a group where you wouldn't want to do that. And so Kevin's right, you can protect that. without a problem. Your bylaws are not saying you have to do it.
It's not necessarily covered under executive session per se, because these meetings in negotiations aren't in executive session. They're just, we're not posting the minutes, and we're working on the behalf of the board.
And they're protected, though, from,
Right, exactly.
correct. No outside people that can come into
Can
a
come in
meeting,
and sit in
it's
those.
protected by state bargaining.
Exactly.
pieces.
Well, and again, to remind, and Scott, on this, we've talked about this extensively, the only two committees that are mandated under statute are what? Which?
I believe it's finance and
Policy.
policy are the only two that you have to have by state statute
Thank you.
that are mandatory. And things that happen in negotiations are protected, and that's the process by which we work under as well. And the only way we report out is things are going well and we're working on an agreement, and then we bring it to executive session to the board for conversation and then present it for a vote to the board.
So I share the concern that Jason brought up, but I think in my mind, it's balanced by the fact that it's not a bad thing for us to be transparent that these negotiations are happening with the public. And so having it as an official other committee would allow for that transparency to note that, we are going into negotiations with this association, the Association of Bus Drivers Association, the MSAD 51 Teachers Association. I think that's a good thing, so long as we're following the law and confidentiality needs that we need to do. But the transparency piece I think, overwhelms any concerns I have of that, so long as you think, Scott and Jeff, and those who have done it before, Jennifer, that we can commit to the confidentiality.
We do that. We actually, we've done updates to the board, and the updates are we're in negotiations with bus drivers and things are going fine, okay? Or we have, we're in a teacher negotiation and we're working through the negotiations and things are going fine. So, so there are times at which we do report out. It's actually been on the board's list before when they have negotiations. It's come up and said, negotiations, and we've just given a brief, but keeping the contents of negotiations confidential.
Right, and by making this move tonight, you're just indicating that the board has another board committee that regularly meets each year, and there's always negotiations going on with a contract at least, a bargaining unit, I should say, in our district at any given time. So it is an other, by default, it already is another committee. It's already a group of people that have to meet each year and bargain collectively, so.
And there's also sunshine laws around collective bargaining, which protect the contents of that, because you don't want to be bargaining in open session. Okay.
Not as effective.
Not when you're problem solving.
Any additional conversation? All those in favor? And opposed? So then finally, I would ask for a motion that focuses on equity. And I will read again, since it's been a little while, a vote to change the Equity Leadership Steering Committee from special committee, ad hoc committee, to other board committee as outlined in Article 5 of the board bylaws under other committees, and amend the bylaws as such.
So moved. Do you want to holding?
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second, and any discussion?
I can't believe that we're moving this forward with the way that this equity committee has affected the community in the last couple of years. And they have repeatedly shown, even recently, that they're not allowing other voices into the conversation. So if you move this forward in the same manner, without opening it up, the division in the community is going to continue. I would rather open this up to more people, make it a club, have advisors that bring their thoughtful input to the curriculum committee and move things forward that way. Moving this forward in its current format just continues the angst in our town, in our community.
Thank you, Jason. Other comments?
I think it's completely appropriate. It does give posted, the ability for the committee to have posted agendas and minutes. It is always work that people aren't going to agree on, and we have spent a lot of time centering the voices of people who have been upset by the equity work and not the students of color or students with disabilities who are the ones being affected by such incidents like the vandalism to the communication board. So we really need to bring it back to who we're having this committee for, and that's for the students, so that everyone has a safe, supportive learning environment.
Thank you, Ann.
So for me, the equity work was laid out before I got here on the board as a goal and as part of the strategic plan, and that's where the ad hoc committee was created, and it was codified every year since as one of the goals of the board. And so it's becoming an official work product of the board, and that's a good thing. It should be. This equity work is ongoing work. It's not, in my opinion, a task. It's something that just needs to be continually evaluated across boundaries of diversity and so many parts and facets of our life. It's an important thing that we need to stick with, but it's already been, effectively codified year after year as official work of our board. And so I think this is just a natural progression to make the committee meet what it already should have been doing and turning it into an other committee, more official committee, I guess. This, I would hope and expect that this would also be an improvement on transparency, making it just like the other committees that aren't other committees, the curriculum committee and so on and so forth, where agendas are posted, minutes are posted, significant public input is part of it. And so I understand that people are upset, and they have every right to be upset and every right to disagree and every right to have your voice heard, but people are getting mad that they don't feel as though they're being listened to. But honestly, you have a right to have your voice heard, but you don't have a right to have people, even elected officials, agree with you, whether it's on process or substance. I mean, that's honestly what elections are for. And so, again, I appreciate it, and I want there to be continual public input, but this is, to me, a manner of just continuing and making it official what we've already codified year after year.
Thank you, Mike. 1 second, Jason. Anybody down here like to weigh in?
Do you want to go?
I'm good.
Okay.
Right now.
I guess, because I can't stop speaking, that I don't really want to say hope, but I think we need to lay out how this is going to work in the fact that this equity leadership steering committee is not going to put policies in place that the board is not going to review. The towns, the students, collectively, we're going to look at this material as it moves forward. I hope that we move slowly through this process and very thoughtful and take input from, we can't say all sides, it's all people, and who wants to bring forward and work on this. I feel like a small group is better. I think it's going to move the work further along, but it needs to be thoughtful and it needs to be reviewed along the way. We can't just push something through and the board not be part of it, or we're not taking the actual input of parents and community members and students through this process. And I think that's what I feel like we're missing in this discussion, is that it feels like we're giving all this weight to the equity committee, and I would hope that the weight still sits with the board and with and listening to our community. I hope I'm not wrong in that.
I like what you said, because it was every note that I had written down, so thank you for being
I often take your words.
You're ruining my night.
But joking aside, I hope that that's the process, and that's why I asked Tyler if I could have a seat at the table, because I don't understand the process. I don't understand the process of this equity committee and what they're doing, in the fact that it's viewed like we're they hold all the power to push this through on curriculum that our kids are going to have, or thoughts or views. And we all have different views on what the kids should be exposed to, but we need to understand that and break it down.
So I was going to wait until everyone, but I do want to react to that.
Yes, please.
Again, because we were in the same place. And the way I look at any of these committees is they are committees of the board, 100%. So in the same way that the committees that many of us chair, we bring back a recommendation, and the board debates and makes the determination as to how you move forward. So, sorry, changing temperatures in here. So I look at it in that very same way. And I think what's been tough with this committee, and I've been on the board a little bit, and I remember resistance and reluctance when I heard the word. And I've talked to a number of folks that are on that committee. I've talked to a number of folks and listened to a number of folks in the community on every side of the issue. And this committee, in whatever form it is, they're been forced to explain what they are, but then just as vigorously what they are not. And that's the tougher one, because within the community, it's easy to say, I've had people say to my face, it is this, and I know that that isn't accurate. So I think that communication for any one of our board committees is absolutely quintessential to being successful in the way that we move forward as an organization. And some of those other concerns that have been correctly brought up, when we talk about appointment to different committees, there is a lot of power that rests in the hands of the chair, but that I have never seen a chair that has operated in anything other than the board's best interest. I just haven't seen it before or after I've been on the board, and I hope that that doesn't change. I think Jennifer is correct, and I was absolutely ecstatic when I saw you throw your hand in for this committee, because you asked the right questions. And I think that that's the important piece of any of the committees and of every one of us on the board to ask those questions. I think that there's room in this equity committee for everybody in the community to gain a better understanding of what it is, to understand what it is not, and try to move a conversation to a place that benefits us in this community. So I'm sorry if you had additional thoughts.
I just wanted to add, since I already have been serving on the Equity Leadership Steering Committee, that I look forward to Jennifer and Avery's addition to our group and having more of a board voice. I think, Jennifer, when you brought that up at the retreat, it really, it made a lot of sense in a way that I hadn't thought about that. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to add that even though by moving equity from ad hoc to other, it would sort of put it in a place where we sort of restrict it to more board members. That doesn't mean that restricting the voices of the people and the ideas of what equity actually means. Everyone in this community still can write to the board members here. They can still share their ideas. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Thank you, Avery. Additional comments? Please, Jason.
The issue for me is that we're 2 years into this process. I was in the original workshop back in 2019, and I joined that workshop because I thought, great, this is going to talk about women's rights and special ed and various groups within the school, kids that get picked on and this and that. And that workshop in 2019 was nothing like that. It was all about black and white. That's it. And so, Jeff, you wrote something recently sort of advocating for the equity committee, and all those lines I can agree with. But what I can't understand is what's that got to do with black and white? And so going back a couple of years, I've put hundreds of hours into this. When my friends were fly fishing on the bank, I was sitting in a chair reading White Fragility, trying to find what part of this made sense to me. I was looking for the golden nugget, like the aha moment. And I've read dozens of books on the topic, both sides, and it doesn't add up. I think both sides, if you will, in the community, we all agree in equity, equality, equal opportunity. These have various meanings, equity especially, but I've put significant time into this, and it doesn't make sense. Ultimately, the issue comes down to two different mindsets, it would seem, in either those that, I'll say, believe in encouraging sort of a victim mentality versus people that believe in sort of working harder and that sort of thing. Well, okay, so you're shaking your head, but you haven't brought these people to the table and had this discussion with them. That's what a portion of the community is upset about. So, and you haven't welcomed people to the table to have this discussion. So that's the whole issue, is it's going to continue the same way if you don't open it up and have these discussions.
So you're saying that, though, that you believe that we're pushing a victim mentality. So I don't understand.
That's the fear, yes. Yeah, and you've done a terrible job communicating otherwise.
Hang on.
I mean, the only thing
I am going to ask for the respectfulness to your colleague.
Excuse me?
I am going to ask for the respectfulness to your colleague.
Okay. The only thing that we've seen come out of the communication committee largely is the letter in June. And, you know, anybody that calls that a success, you know, that's the catalyst for all the division in our community. So if you look at that as the report card of how we've done and how we've approached things, we haven't done well. And it's not going to get better until you bring both sides in. I mean, some of the people that call me and are just so frustrated, they're like the kindest people I've ever met. Like, and the same things that they're saying are the same things that Ann and Tyler would say and Jeff would say. But it's how you get there. It's not going to get better if we don't bring in both sides of the community. It's just not. They might be tough discussions, but this is a community of good people. I mean, look at how many people have flocked to Cumberland, Maine in the last 18 months. We were doing it right to start with. Maine was doing it right. Cumberland was doing it right. We've got good people with good ideas, good Maine values. They came here for a reason. We weren't doing it wrong, okay? But we've got to have these discussions. We've got to bring in the other side, or it's not going to get better.
So setting aside the comments about victim mentality, and I think that's completely wrong, but setting that aside, I'm deeply supportive of bringing people together to have hard conversations.
But it hasn't happened.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
And whether it's happened or not is, well, one, it's in the past, and I also, noting that the ad hoc committees were open to the public, you know, this doesn't necessarily have an impact on the structural piece that we're actually voting on now, of actually turning it into an other committee. And in fact, I think that this process is actually making it more transparent and making us more accountable to making this much more, having it so the whole of the board owns this. And so I get the frustration, but, and I've seen some of the frustration, but I've also seen a whole lot of support, and I've also heard frustration from the complete opposite end of, you're not doing enough. You've only done the letter, where we need more. So there is a depth in the community of interest in this issue, and this is something that making this an official part of the board makes a whole host of sense, and so it allows the board to truly own it so that we can step in and have some public information sessions, public hearing sessions specifically on the issue. I'd be all for that, but again, this is a process issue to try to make this better and make the board more transparent and more accountable related to this issue.
But correct me if I'm wrong, other committees aren't required to have minutes or post the meetings, and the members still come down to the chair. Is that correct?
That is correct for yes, that is factually correct, but I think you've heard from every person on the board, pretty much, saying that they want agendas, minutes, they want transparency. The leaders of the Equity Leadership Committee have said this, that they want to do that. So, yeah, and the appointment of members from the board chair, I mean, again, that is a completely standard thing. And we're all elected, and we elected our chair, and the chair we knew that was one of the jobs of the chair. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mike. So, again, Jason, I hear you fully, and I'm glad that you continue to speak and represent the folks that you talk to. I think it's important. I do believe that, back to Jennifer's point and to echo my own sentiment, which is, as a board committee, we can have these ongoing conversations so that we can be charging a committee, we can understand the feedback from a committee, we can draw implications from what they find, and we can adopt their recommendations as the board sees fit. And I don't think that we've limited ourselves in any capacity by correctly moving this from an ad hoc committee to another committee. Oh, Tom, sorry, you got to never move when I'm looking down there. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? And all opposed? And any abstentions?
One.
And Peter, thank you.
And I would, to explain the checking out, you know, I think I support the continuation of this committee. I've been very displeased that we have not diversified it as much as I think we should have, which is part of it. But but that's why I did it. So, and that's why the checking out thing. But I do want to publicly say I have been not pleased with the way this committee's been put together. I wasn't pleased with the way a couple of the other committees were put together earlier, and I've stated it so the public, you know, at least I always tell the public where I'm coming from, and that's where I'm coming from on this one, thus the checking out vote.
Thank you, Peter. The next item on the agenda is item E, and that is a vote to enter executive session to discuss a property acquisition pursuant to state statute MRSA 4056C.
I'll move that we enter into an executive session to discuss property acquisition pursuant to state statute MRSA 4056C.
Second. Second. And all those in favor? And opposed? Thank you.